All right, we will go ahead and get started. Again, I appreciate everyone who was able to join the call this evening. My name is Neil Meredith. I'm with the City of Olathe. I'm the Senior Project Manager, and I am the project manager for this project. You are here because you are interested in the 119th Street Woodland to Northgate Extension Project. Um, just a couple notes as we jump into this meeting. This meeting will be recorded. We do typically post a recorded version of this meeting to the city website in the week following this presentation. I'll go through the presentation at least one time. We will have a question period, and then we will repeat for any that joined late. And for any questions you may have, please type those into the chat box in the webinar chat. I'll run through the presentation and then try to go back and capture any of those questions in that chat box and answer those live on the air to the best of our ability. Any questions regarding specific private property or impacts to private property can be addressed by reaching out to me directly following the presentation. And feel free to type things into the chat box that you appreciate as well. Questions and comments are welcome. Our agenda for this evening, we will go through a project background and project details. We will introduce the construction team. I will walk through our anticipated construction schedule and proposed sequencing that we plan to do with this project. We will walk through some items for what to expect during construction. Again, with that introduction of the construction team, we will post our contact information. Further details are available at our project website. We will have some links at the end of this presentation for you guys to easily find that information as well. And we will have a question period following the presentation, and we'll run through the presentation again and then have another question period. About the project, the main goal of this 119th Street extension from Northgate to Woodland Road is to build a new section of arterial 119th Street over BNSF, Mill Creek, and the Gary Holler Trail. Part of this project does include a new roundabout at 119th Street in Northgate. On the west side of the project, we will also improve the intersections of Lone Elm, Iowa, and Woodland along 119th Street. At those intersections, we will add turn lanes and signalized intersections. At those intersection improvements, we also plan to construct raised medians for access control and safety. Our 119th Street improvements will also provide pedestrian and bicycle accommodations in that new section. We will create a connection from those 119th Street improvements to the Gary Holler Mill Creek Trail. And we do plan to place a permanent piece of art in the roundabout at 119th Street in Northgate. Again, that extension of 119th Street between Woodland and Northgate that you see on the screen there will be a 4-lane arterial section to match 119th Street to the east. The turn lane additions at our intersection improvements on the west side will allow them to maintain their level of service as we connect 119th Street. And just for some of those on this call, again, we will not be closing Woodland at the railroad tracks as a part of this project. That was something that was explored in earlier phases of the project, but that is not something that is moving forward. Again, looking at the big picture from west to east, we will have intersection improvements at Lone Elm. Those improvements will add turn lanes in every direction. We will also be constructing new traffic signals and ADA accommodations to sidewalks. Same thing at Iowa Street and 119th. The intersection will be widened in all directions to accommodate 119th Street improvements. We will also construct new traffic signals and ADA accommodations. There will also be a new wall on the south, or we will remove and replace the existing wall on the southwest corner of that intersection as a part of these project improvements. So you will see wall improvements in that area and that intersection. Moving east to Woodland, this is where we taper 119th Street to allow for that 4-lane arterial section to the east of Woodland. So our intersection improvements at Woodland are a little more extensive than what you would see to the west at Lone Elm in Iowa. Because of that widening and that taper, we will also have improvements to Cherry Lane in that connection as well. Moving further east, the 119th Street extension. Again, this will be a new 4-lane arterial section with median divided improvements, new stormwater, new lighting system, new roadway is all a part of those improvements in that section. Again, those improvements will span BNSF and Mill Creek at a grade separation. And then moving further to the east, we also have the new roundabout at 119th Street and Northgate. We will also have a new tie-in for Nelson Road, pushing that tie-in of Nelson further south along Northgate. There will also be a smaller roundabout at that location as well. And the 119th Street improvements east of that roundabout will be pushed to Sunset to accommodate everything that's going on with that new roundabout. Our construction team for this project. Again, my name is Neil Meredith. I'm the project manager with the City of Olathe. Some of the other faces you can expect to see on site during our construction. With the City of Olathe, our on-site inspectors will be Steve Craig and Rod Montgomery. Their supervisor and our inspection supervisor is Nate Gronow for this project. Our contractor and consultant team. The contractor was awarded this construction contract by City Council in early November. Pyramid Construction Inc. will be our contractors on this one. Pyramid is a very experienced bridge contractor in the City of Olathe. They've completed multiple projects in the last few years alone with bridge components. We are happy to have them on board for this as well. Their contacts, Pyramid's project manager will be Pat Weaver. Pyramid's field contact for this project will be Blair Lecluse. We also have our consultant inspection team that is helping us out with some of the heavier structural inspections on this. They will be present on site for anything structural as well. We have John Casey and Drew Degu with HDR Inc. for this. And HDR was our design engineer on this project as well. Moving into our anticipated construction sequence. As you can see here, our goal with setting up the sequencing was to minimize impacts to traffic as much as we possibly could, understanding that impacts could not be avoided. In 2025, our intent is to work on the west side of the project, primarily focusing between Lone Elm and Woodland on that west side. We will complete those intersection improvements in 2025 at Lone Elm, Iowa, and Woodland. The goal of phasing it in this way is to try to complete all of those intersection improvements before we cause traffic impacts on the east side of the project with the new roundabout. In 2025, to complete these improvements, we do anticipate a full closure of Woodland due to the level of intersection improvements at that location. The remaining work at Lone Elm and Iowa intersections, we will do our best to maintain traffic flow through those intersections through construction. There will be lane closures and active construction though on 119th Street as a result of trying to keep those intersections open. We will have traffic control and flaggers posted as needed throughout the project. Moving centrally to the project, the improvements to be constructed between Woodland and Northgate, those improvements will be ongoing throughout the entirety of the construction. So we would expect to see a presence from our contractor on site for 2025 and 2026 in this location. For those in the project area, I expect you did see a ramp up in construction activity in the last week. They have started access from both the east side and west side of this project at Woodland, and then on the other side at Northgate and 119th Street. But again, going back to that 25 and 2026 construction phase, that will be to construct the new section of 119th Street as well as the bridge. We also have a substantial water main relocation in 2025 that will be necessary to start the bridge on the west side of the project. Moving into calendar year 2026, again, With the intent of wrapping up all of our intersection improvements on the west side of the project in 2025, we would expect our on-site presence to shift to the east side of the project in 2026. That would include the roundabout at 119th and Northgate, as well as a closure of 119th and Northgate to facilitate that roundabout construction. Taking a closer look at this from a plan perspective and being able to kind of show you the limits of our project here. This diagram shows Lone Elm and 119th Street through Woodland and 119th. You can see Lone Elm on the left side of the page there with the 119th Street going east to west, Iowa, and then Woodland Road. Again, looking at this, we do have a contractor presence on the east side of Woodland Road at 119th Street right now, as they have started access to that side of the project and preparing for project improvements at that location. We would expect to see a job site or a job trailer show up on site at 11925 Woodland. Our construction team will kind of have a base of operations at that location. Again, moving through this diagram, kind of pointing out some features. As far as the phasing goes in that we would expect to see in 2025, we will likely start with intersection improvements at Woodland. That would be the focus of our first phase of construction. And then our contractor will kind of move to the west. We would anticipate Iowa intersection improvement starting next, and then Lone Elm to follow that Iowa intersection. Our contractor will be doing the best, to the best of their ability. They will be working behind existing curb and setting some limits, putting in some of our improvements, our storm sewer, getting those intersections ready before we drop all that curb. So we will do the best that we can to stay out of those intersections until absolutely necessary. Again, with the intent to maybe work from Woodland west with these intersection improvements, I would still expect to see construction activities and construction impacts once everything is ramped up in 2025, further later into the spring. I would still expect to see a construction presence at all intersections at some point during the calendar year 2025, especially as we move into the summer months. Again, we would expect to see impacts to all of those at some point. But our goal is to complete all of these improvements in calendar year 2025 and have this open to traffic before we impact traffic on the east side of the project. As a part of these intersection improvements, once we get those set up, we will also have a mill and overlay of 119th Street between these intersection improvements. So from Lone Elm to Iowa, and then again from Iowa to Woodland. That mill and overlay will include us removing the top layer of asphalt service. We'll do crack repairs and joint repairs for any failures we see in the street, and then put a new surface on 119th Street as well. Again, this is what we anticipate in calendar year 2025. Moving to the east of the project, or to the east side of the project in central location as well. Woodland Road is on the left side of the page here, and you can see kind of the extent of our proposed improvements of the new section of 119th Street. Again, that is a new 4-lane arterial section, as well as a bridge spanning BNSF, Mill Creek, and the Gary Holler Trail. We would anticipate construction presence between Woodland and Northgate and 119th Street to the east. That central section there in red, highlighted in red. Again, we would expect to see construction activity in that area throughout the project. And then moving to the east, we have the new roundabout at 119th Street and improvements off of that as well. The 119th Street improvements go to the east to Sunset Drive and to the south along Northgate. We also are realigning the Nelson Road intersection to come into Northgate a little further south to better set up traffic and safety at that roundabout on 119th. Those Nelson improvements would likely be in 2026 as well. But if we are ahead of schedule, that may be one item that moves up. Again, depending on how things go our first year. Going over some of those anticipated closures as a result of all of that work. Again, we would expect a hard closure at the Woodland intersection in 2025. That will likely be as we approach the summer months. And again, I would expect that closure to be likely for the duration of summer. Could start as early as the spring and then go through the end of summer on that one. Gary Holler Trail under 118th Street Bridge will also be closed. We've had some intermittent closures of that already, but we would expect that to fully close around the first week or so in January. And due to the amount of construction activity at that location, I would anticipate that trail could be closed for the duration of our project at that point. The Cherry Street, the local closure, local improvements at that location will also necessitate a closure. That would likely be concurrently with the Woodland closure as well. Again, the goal is to have the west side of that project substantially complete by the end of year 2025. Moving into 2026, we will have a closure at 119th and Northgate to construct that roundabout. Gary Holler Trail under the 119th Street Bridge again would still be closed. And we would anticipate a closure at the Nelson realignment at Northgate as well when we get into those roundabout improvements. Our goal with this setup is to open 119th and Northgate and the bridge in early 2027. If our construction activities necessitate further closures, the city will work with the contractor to set those up and post any road closures to our city website. We would expect detours to be posted for the Woodland closure and the 119th and Northgate closure as well. With that 119th and Northgate closure being pretty substantial, due to the way our street network is set up, we would anticipate that detour would go down to Santa Fe. Message boards will be posted prior to a closure of any of our arterial streets. We try to get those up 10 days advance of the planned closure. Again, if our construction activities necessitate something further, the city will work with the contractor. Something that could necessitate that would be if we have some storm improvements that we're doing with our intersection. Our hope would be to construct those a span at a time and leave the road open to traffic. But if field conditions necessitate that we have to chase the trench of that storm sewer a little farther, that could require a road closure. But again, we'd provide notice and signage and make sure that that's posted prior to that event. What to expect during construction? Obviously, there will be extensive signage and warnings for construction activity on site. Again, for those that have traveled on the east side of the project at 119th and Northgate today, we did have a lane drop in effect to allow for some equipment and construction activity, material going into and out of the site at that location already today. I would expect increased truck traffic due to the barriers kind of naturally set up by this project with BNSF and Mill Creek. With the work we're doing to construct new 119th Street, I would anticipate construction access from both west side and east side of the project. Construction equipment. Again, I would expect that throughout the project area. When we are doing the intersection improvements on the west side of the project, there could be pieces of equipment working at each location during certain times. Lane closures, lane drops, and flaggers. When we have construction that is impacting traffic, in order to safely construct improvements, people can expect lane closures, lane drops, and construction flaggers throughout construction, especially on that west side, and especially as we get further into the year, towards the end of the summer and into the fall, when we're working to connect some of those intersection improvements. Please be aware of those warnings when they are posted on site. There will be activity behind the curbs before we get into the actual intersection improvements. So please be aware and please take precaution if you are in those intersections. Again, we will have a mill and overlay on the west side of the project once we have completed the bulk of those intersection improvements to tie the road surface together with everything. You can expect to see utility crossings. So again, some of those intersection improvements, we have fiber that's going in. We also have storm sewer that's being constructed. When that happens, our contractor will be placing improvements across the street. We will do the best of our ability to keep traffic open during those improvements. But you can expect to see that on site as well. With all of this, again, we are hoping to be substantially complete with the west side of that project by the end of 2025. 119th and Northgate plus the new 119th Street Bridge. We are shooting for substantial completion by the end of 26 with that opening in early 27. And I would anticipate construction presence on site from now until that point. Just to go over some of our possible schedule disruptors, we do obviously have to deal with weather. If we get a dry, temperate year, construction could go fast. If construction goes fast, then some of the schedule that we've spoken about here could get accelerated. But if we get extreme weather conditions, extreme cold, if we get a very wet year, some of our schedule impacts could be delayed. Some of the conditions we counter on site could cause delays as well. The city did subsurface rock investigations. We did a geotech investigation before this, during the design of this project. But sometimes those conditions we encounter on site do vary. Due to some of those factors, we could expect some conditions on site to maybe slow construction down as well. I'm working around utilities. There are existing utilities throughout the corridor. The city worked with our utility partners and utility providers in the area to try to relocate those to the best of our ability before the project. But working in and around those utilities can still cause delays. Procurement of materials. With the scope of this project, some of the materials involved with the bridge, but also some of our traffic signal equipment, some of our water line equipment, fiber lines, some of those materials can cause delays. We are currently working with our contractor to allow them to procure those materials as quickly as we can to avoid any of those impacts. Some of our specialized scope items, including our water line relocate, and obviously some of our bridge construction and the nature of that work in and around the railroad can cause issues as well. Any changes to the schedule as communicated here will be communicated through the city website. But hopefully we've allotted for those things to the best of our ability, and hopefully everything goes according to plan out there. What the project could look like. This is a rendering showing 119th Street at the proposed roundabout. Again, that is a 4-lane arterial section with the bridge over BNSF, Mill Creek, and the Gary Holler Trail. You can see the reconfigured intersection south of the 119th roundabout in this image as well. There are pedestrian connectivity throughout the roundabout and south to Gary Holler Trail as well. There will be a 10-foot side path on the south side of the new 119th Street improvements. And there will also be a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side as well. Moving into the roundabout on that east side of the project. The city has a public art committee that oversees the public art program, which fosters the commissioning, acquisition, and preservation of public art in Olathe. If you have questions about the art process or our public art committee, please feel free to contact Renee Rush, who is our staff liaison to that committee. Her contact information is here on the screen. Again, the current plan is for the city to work over the next couple of years to find a piece of art that would live permanently in the center of the 119th and Northgate roundabout. This rendering is just a visual representation of that. It's not intended to be representative of the final product. but we do plan to have um, a brick paver section as you see in that rendering, which would match some of the brick pavers we have to the east at 119th and I-35. We would also plan to have some landscaping in that roundabout and then the art piece as the centerpiece of that. That centerpiece would be for residents and visitors along our 119th Street and Northgate corridor, welcoming all to our downtown. It continues to be a centerpiece for our community as a whole. Again, that visualization is for representative purposes only. It's not intended to be what the final product would look like. All right, and that takes us to questions. Again, as we've gone through this presentation, it looks like people have been typing some things into the chat box. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat box at this time. I will try to go through those and answer any questions in there. We do have a link to the project website posted in this slide. I've also provided the main page for our project website. You could also see if this works. You should also be able to scan the QR code on this page, and that would take you to the project website as well. It worked earlier today, but don't take my word for it. Let's see. Again, that is my contact information. If anyone has any questions regarding direct private property impacts, please feel free to reach out to me. Let's see. Let's go through some of the questions. One of the first questions, are there any plans in the future to expand 119th Street to 4 lanes from Lone Elm to Woodland Road? Our future plans are detailed in our capital improvement plan, which is published through our city website. Currently, the 2025 to 2029 version of the CIP is published and posted to our city website under the budget section. We do not have that change from a 2-lane street to a 4-lane divided arterial in that 25 to 29 CIP. So that is not something that the city has planned at this time. I think the city will continue to evaluate traffic once these project improvements are in place and continue to evaluate the need for that. But hopefully that would be years down the road. But again, if it shows up as a future project, it would be in our capital improvement plan. There's a question. Let's see. A question about the Woodland closure, asking about how traffic would be rerouted. So let's see. We do have a preliminary detour for that. That would be, currently we are showing that from Harold over to Lone Elm and then up to College, but we would further evaluate at the time of that closure. Again, I would expect that Woodland closure to be somewhere towards the end of the spring through summer 2025. With the level improvements at that intersection, it just wouldn't be safe to continue to allow traffic through there while our contractor is working. This could be representative of what that may look like. Someone is asking about Nelson and traffic movement at that future intersection. Um, Again, to protect the traffic coming out of the roundabout and to maintain safety at that intersection. That would only be a right turn out of Nelson, but for anyone coming out of that location, if they would like to go south, all they would need to do is go through the roundabout, all three levels, and then head south. So we're talking a few hundred feet. Will 119th and Woodland be completely closed or just from the south? When we have that closure to do those improvements, we would expect that intersection to be fully closed. Does the water running off the road from Woodland to Northgate go into new storm drains? There will be new storm drains and a new storm system as a part of our street improvements. That will tie into existing storm systems that are in place at that intersection. There is a reinforced concrete box that goes through that intersection from the southwest to the northeast. But we will have storm sewer that ties into that as well. Will the no longer used area of existing Nelson be repurposed? We will have landscaping improvements at the conclusion of the project. Um, those improvements would be at the areas of that old Nelson intersection, both on the north and south of that alignment. We will also have landscaping improvements along the Gary Holler Trail, as well as landscaping improvements on the north side of 119th Street at the roundabout, south of the Northview Trails neighborhood. Will there be a protected left turn for southbound traffic from Iowa Street at the Iowa Street and 119th Street intersection? Yes, there will. There will be left and right turns at all the intersection improvements on the west side of the project, so Lone Elm, Iowa, and Woodland. Will the new roundabout island be irrigated? Yes, I believe it will. I also believe the median green space in the medians where there is green space and not brick pavers would be irrigated as well. Someone asked, when does the construction start in 2025? Our contractor has started within the last week, so I would expect to see a contractor presence on site daily from this point moving forward. As far as getting into those actual intersections, again, that work would ramp up more as we get into better weather in the spring of 2025. But we could expect to see construction activity in there starting prior to that as well. But it will definitely ramp up as we get into better weather in the following year. Will there be trail access near the new roundabout? Yes, there will. On the south side of the roundabout and the west side of the road at 119th and Northgate, so south coming off of the bridge. Someone is concerned about access to downtown. Yes, we understand that is a concern. Um, the closure on that roundabout on the east side of the project, I would expect that to be possibly as long as 8 to 12 months, probably closer to 8 months with the current schedule. But again, that's without some of those schedule impacts. The detour would start at Ridgeview Road and go south to Santa Fe, but we can continue to evaluate those options as the project continues. Some suggestions for art, very appreciated. Someone is asking for total project cost. If you go to the city's project website, again, you can find our CIP, but the total authorized amount for this project is around $55 million at this time. Is this going to be 4 lane from Lone Elm to Woodland? Again, at the conclusion of this project, will still be 2 lanes from Lone Elm to Woodland. Again, any future improvements would show up in our capital improvement plan. But the width, once you get clear of the intersection improvements, again, the width would be what it is today at the conclusion of this project. Again, any future improvements to the widening of 119th from Lone Elm to Woodland would be a future project. Someone is asking, is how will the city prevent traffic from cutting through housing developments during the Woodland closure? Again, the city will do our best to post that closure, to post a detour route, but we can't force anyone not to use city public streets. If you are seeing an issue during construction as far as traffic obeying traffic laws and posted signage, then please report that to our police department. But the city and this project team will continue to evaluate any signs we have on site or any posted detour to make sure that we are giving the general traffic and the general public to details to the best of our ability on where they should be driving. Are there plans to make 119th Street 4 lanes west of K7? Again, not with this project. Any future plans or any future projects would be in our CIP plan. I can make sure we take another look at that as well, though. If I've misspoke on anything, we'll post it to the city website and provide details through our project link as well. On the rendering, it appears there's a new retaining wall along 119th east north of the roundabout. Will that further push the project more north, removing more trees? That wall there that we've proposed is on the back of sidewalk. And in that location, our sidewalk is as close to the curb as safety would allow. Our goal there is to try to limit removal of any trees south of that Northwood Trails neighborhood. But due to the grade difference, yeah, there is a retaining wall in that location, which will require some tree removal. We do have a proposed landscaping plan to put more trees there at the conclusion of the project. With the intersections of Lone Elm, Iowa, and Woodland all be closed at the same time at any point. The plan is to avoid that. Our plan is to only do a closure at the Woodland intersection at this time. Again, once we get into subsurface improvements and we encounter things on site, there's the possibility that could change, but the goal intent of the way we've set up the plans and the phasing would be to avoid that to the best of our ability. And it looks like someone has kindly pointed out that it's possible that that future widening of 119th Street may be in the out years of our CIP. Again, we'll take a look at that I'll take a look at that following this meeting and post any update on that to our project website just to let people know. Apologize for misspeaking on that at any time. That takes us through most of those questions. There might be some that I missed here or there. If you feel like I didn't get to your question and you want a response, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My email should be on the screen right there. Again, I apologize for that, but any private property impacts, any questions specific to private property, I'd be happy to answer those, but please do reach out individually. We're getting a little late on time here, but I will run through the presentation one more time and then have another question period. Again, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Neil Meredith. I'm a senior project manager here at the City of Olathe. I am the project manager for 119th Street, Northgate to Woodland Improvement Project. I will run through our presentation here one more time and then stick around to answer more questions. Please type any questions you have into the webinar chat box, and I will do my best to get to those. Again, if you feel like I omitted your question or didn't get to it, please feel free to reach out individually. This is our agenda for this presentation. I will go through the project background and some project details. I will introduce our construction team. I will go through our anticipated construction schedule and sequencing. I will communicate some items you would expect to see during construction. Again, and I will provide my contact information and some links to the project website as well for anyone that would like some more information. And then we will have another question and answer period. About the project, the main goal of this project is to extend 119th Street from Northgate to Woodland. This will include a new bridge of 119th Street over BNSF, Mill Creek, and the Gary Holler Trail. We will have a new roundabout on the east side of the project at 119th Street and Northgate. We will improve 119th Street intersections at Lone Elm, Iowa, Woodland with turn lane additions and signalized intersections. We will construct raised medians for access control and safety at those intersections. We will provide pedestrian and bicycle accommodations in those new sections of 119th Street. Again, we will connect sidewalk along that bridge to the east side of the project and to the Gary Holler Trail south of the roundabout. The city does also plan to have art in that 119th Street and Northgate roundabout at this time, and that would be a permanent art piece to welcome both our residents and visitors through that corridor to the downtown. Looking at the project as a whole, again, we will have improvements at 119th Street and Lone Elm intersection. There will be turn lanes in all directions as well as a signalized intersection. We will have improvements at 119th Street in Iowa, new turn lanes in all directions as well as a signalized intersection. There will also be removal and replacement of an existing wall on the southwest corner of that intersection. Moving east to Woodland, this is where our intersection improvements uh, increase in scope to allow for that new section of 119th Street between Woodland and Northgate. This is where we begin to taper out to meet those four lanes that will be on the east side of that intersection. To accommodate that, we will also have improvements at Cherry Lane to tie that back into Woodland Road. And then the actual 119th Street extension will be a 4-lane divided arterial section. So two separate 860-foot span bridges, 60 feet high at some points, will be our grade separated railway crossing over BNSF, Mill Creek, and Northgate. And then further east of that, again, we will tie in 119th Street at Northgate with a new roundabout. We will also realign the Northgate and Nelson intersections further south to safely tie into those new roundabout improvements to the north. And then those 119th Street improvements carry over through Sunset Drive to the east, which would be our terminus of the project on the east end. Introducing our construction team. Again, my name is Neil Meredith. I'm the project manager for the city of Olathe. Also on our team for this project from the city of Olathe will be Steve Craig and Roderick Montgomery. They will be our daily on-site presence from the city of Olathe. We will also have our inspection supervisor, Nate Gronow, present on this project as well. Our construction team is led by Pyramid Contractors, Inc. They are a very experienced bridge contractor here in the city of Olathe. They've completed multiple projects in the last few years alone. The city is excited to have them on board for this project. Their main points of contact, their project manager is Pat Weaver, and then their field contact is Blair Lecluse. Joining us as well will also be our structural inspectors from HDR. That is John Casey and Drew DeGoo. And HDR is also our design engineer for this project. Walking through our anticipated construction sequence for this project. Again, our general schedule was set up to try to minimize impacts to traffic as best we could, knowing that impacts could not be avoided. Our intent in 2025 is to work on the west side of the project between Lone Elm and Woodland. Along with those 2025 improvements, we will have a contractor presence between Woodland and Northgate. But again, our goal is to complete those west side improvements before we cause traffic impacts to the east side of the road to help traffic move through the city. Calendar year 2025 and 26, again, expect construction presence between Woodland and Northgate for that new section of 119th Street and the bridges. We will also have a substantial water main relocation east of Woodland to prepare for our bridge improvements as well. Again, obviously, our bridge construction is a major component of that 25 and 26 construction. That leaves the east side of the project in calendar year 2026. That will include the roundabout at 119th and Northgate, as well as that closure at 119th and Northgate. Our anticipated construction completion for all of these improvements is early 2027. This is kind of a closer look at some of that sequencing on the west side of the project, calendar year 2025. Again, we do have a contractor presence on site at Woodland and 119th. You can see their construction access has been established into the future 119th Street improvements on the east side of that intersection there. Again, as we get into calendar year 2025 and as we get into better weather in the spring, their presence will go into that, will start to go further into that intersection. We are doing our best to acquire materials to begin some of that work behind the existing curb lines as they are right now. Moving east to west on this, our next big area for construction following some of those Woodland improvements would be the Iowa intersection. Again, that is highlighted by a wall replacement as well on the southwest side of that intersection, further west into along 119th Street. 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 And then following that, we would again expect a larger presence at Lone Elm at the Lone Elm intersection. Again, to be clear, there will probably be times where you can see work or see equipment or see material staged at all three of these intersections at the same time. But we believe that will be the focus as we move into 2025. Contractor presence heavy at Woodland. And then as we get that into construction, you will start to see that shift to Iowa and then shift to Lone Elm. But again, there will be components that will impact traffic at all three intersections at the same time. But our goal would be to leave the Lone Elm and Iowa intersections open to traffic, with the only closure being at that Woodland intersection. Following all of our intersection improvements in 2025, so late fall 2025, we will also have a mill and overlay of 119th Street between those intersections to tie in that new surface of those new intersections to the existing street. So we will mill off the top layer of asphalt at those locations, complete any crack repairs or joint repairs as necessary, and then put on a new surface. Moving to the central and eastern portions of our project, again, I would expect a heavy contractor presence in 25 and 26 between Woodland and Northgate for the new 119th and bridge construction in that location. We also have a substantial water line relocation in that area as well. Moving into 2026, we would expect to see impacts at the new 119th Street roundabout. Again, we will do our best to limit that closure. The city has done some proactive scoping items. We worked with the developer on the south side of that street to construct some sidewalk and readjust some of the grading to prepare for those improvements to minimize impacts to both their development, but also traffic once we get in here to do these improvements and expedite some of our work. But we would expect that to be a substantial closure due to the scope of that roundabout and some of the activity that needs to happen at that location. It will not be for all of 2026, but I would anticipate it's a pretty substantial piece of 2026. Again, the city will provide updates as we get closer to that construction through the city website and that closure. Again, walking through some of those closures that have been a substantial part of this as well. 2025, we would have that Woodland closure that will likely focus on the summer. But that again, that could be a 4 to 8 month closure as well. The Gary Holler Trail under the 119th Street Bridge will be closed soon. Our contractor has started some activity over on the east side of the project. But based on the scope of their work, we would anticipate that Gary Holler Trail closes in the vicinity of our proposed bridge in early January, potentially as early as January 6th. We will have a local closure at Cherry Street to tie in those intersection improvements. I would expect that to align with our Woodland closure as well. We do hope to have the west side of the project substantially complete by the end of year 2025. In 2026, again, we would expect to see that 119th and Northgate closure. The Gary Holler Trail under the bridge will continue to be closed. And then we will have a closure at Nelson to do that realignment to tie that intersection in further south along Northgate and create safe distance from the proposed roundabout. Our goal with this phasing again is to have all of these items open in early 2027. As we've discussed, if construction activities necessitate further closures, the city will work with our contractor and make sure those are posted to our road closures website and to the city website. What to expect during construction? We will have signage and warnings for our construction activity on site. Any of our proposed lane closures, lane drops, and flaggers, again, the city will review the contractor's traffic control plans and will actively be reviewing and maintaining all of our traffic control on site. We do expect to see increased truck traffic throughout the project area due to the barriers of Mill Creek and BNSF. We would expect to see construction access throughout the project on both the west side and the east side of the project. Construction equipment. Again, I would expect to see construction equipment on site at all times throughout the project. As we get into those intersection improvements on the west side, there could be times where construction equipment, materials, it is staged at those locations as well. Again, the city will actively be managing lane closures, lane drops, and flagging operations to allow traffic to safely move through zones of construction activity. But please take safety precautions as you move through our construction activity through the project. Prior to work in the actual intersections, do expect to see construction activity behind the curbs, the existing curbs on site. We will do our best to complete any improvements behind those curbs as best we can before causing impacts to the actual intersections. As we move into late 2025, fall, towards the end of the year, we will also be doing a mill and overlay of the 119th Street road surface between our intersection improvements. We will also have utility crossings that need to be installed at all of our intersection improvements. So please expect to see some of the activity spanning 119th Street. Again, we will do our best to leave that open to traffic as best we can. Some of that utility work, as well as some of the grade changes at Woodland, is what is necessitating that closure. Lone Elm to Woodland, we hope to be substantially complete by the end of 2025. 119th and Northgate, again, phasing that construction into 2026, but hope to be substantially complete by the end of 26 with that for fully open to traffic in early 2027. Some of our typical schedule disruptors that we sometimes see with project is weather. If we have a dry, temperate year, we could go fast. Maybe some of our communications through the city website will be that we're ahead of schedule if we get that. But if we have an extreme wet year, we could see negative impacts to the schedule. Conditions encountered on site. Again, the city has done investigative work through design on geotech and on-site conditions. But sometimes when we get into construction, some of our on-site conditions are different than what we expected. Any variances could cause delays. Procurement of materials. We are actively working with our contractor to try to procure all materials for this project. But some of the signalized intersections, some of the traffic signals, city fiber, and some of those materials do cause delays. We are doing our best to get those procured and avoid those impacts. And again, some of our specialized scoping items, our 860-foot bridge span, our water line relocation that is a substantial piece east of Woodland. Some of those items are specialized for this project and can impact schedules. Any major changes to what we've communicated will be updated through our city website. But again, hopefully everything goes according to plan and we hold to our schedule and everyone gets to enjoy these improvements in early 2027. Again, just taking a look at the rendering of our new roundabout and bridge section over BNSF. As you can see here, that section will be a 4-lane divided arterial spanning BNSF Mill Creek and the Gary Holler Trail. We will have that new roundabout with brick pavers, landscaping, and an art piece as the focal point in the center. You can see the realignment of Nelson Road to the south of that intersection in this rendering. Again, some of the questions that were posed earlier, we will go back with landscaping and tree replacements on the north side of the roundabout, as well as in some of the areas vacated by Nelson as well with this project. On the south side of the bridge, we will have a wider section of sidewalk Um, Again, along 119th Street, that sidewalk will be 10 feet wide. As it spans the bridge, it's 12 feet and then back to 10 feet to connect to Gary Holler Trail on the southwest side of that intersection. Again, looking at that roundabout, we kind of have a visual rendering here. Again, visualization purposes only, not intended to be representative of the final product. But the city does have a public art committee. That committee oversees the public art program, which fosters the commissioning, acquisition, and preservation of public art in Olathe. If you have any questions about the art process or the public art committee, please feel free to contact Renee Rush. She is our staff liaison to that art committee. Her contact information here is noted on the screen. Again, the current plan is for the city to select a piece of art to live permanently in the center of that 119th and Northgate roundabout. This will be a centerpiece for residents and visitors, welcoming folks along our 119th and Northgate corridor into downtown, which continues to be a centerpiece for our community. Again, that rendering there is not necessarily representative of the final art piece. Is for rendering purposes only. And we are back to questions. So I will try to hop back again. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to enter those into the webinar chat. I will do my best to run through those as we are live here on screen. My contact information is on the screen there as well, along with the link to the website. You can also access the project website by scanning that QR code. That should take you right to the project website. Again, any questions, please put those into the webinar chat. Someone is asking, will there be any improvements from the intersection of Lone Elm toward Harold? That is a project, Lone Elm, Harold to 119th Street, that is currently slated to go into design in 2025. That project is in our current CIP plan. Again, for folks wishing to see out year capital improvement projects, all of our capital improvement projects are posted to our 5-year capital improvement plan. That is on our city's website. If you go to the budget section, you should be able to find that document. But going back to improvements on Lone Elm, Harold to 119th, again, that is a project that is beginning design in 2025. So typically design land acquisition and utility relocations for the first 2 years of that project, with construction beginning in the 3rd year. But the city, again, will go through the public involvement process with that project as well. So expect to see public meetings in that area in the next several years. Are there plans for residents south of Woodland and north of the railroad to leave their homes when the railroad plans improvements? I'm not following that question 100%. Any improvements that the railroad has, I'm not aware of those at this time. For that person asking that question, please feel free to reach out individually. We can't see if we can't get you more information. What time will crews start each morning? Typical city working hours are 8 to 5. But the city does allow some projects to work outside and extend those working hours in the sake of expediency. We typically do that when we're not on someone's front doorstep. So there may be some extended hours working between Woodland and Northgate on this project. Will the Northgate trail access parking area stay open during construction for trail access to the east and south? We will talk to Johnson County Parks and Rec about that. That is their trail access. I know they had previously talked about possibly doing some improvements concurrently with our closures on this one. But we will talk to them about that as well. But anything going to the north from that trail access along Northgate would be closed during our construction. How many lanes wide will 119th Street be on the west side of the Woodland intersection? Again, the 119th Street between Woodland and Iowa will remain a two-lane road. Any future widening of that would be with a future project. And it is possible some of those improvements may be in our out years in the current CIP. Again, I can post an update to our project website on that. But specific to the Woodland intersection at 119th and Woodland, Woodland on the west side will have an east to northbound left. It will have an east through lane and then an east through lane that also doubles as a turn lane southbound. So three lanes east, north, and south. Someone is asking about specific detour routes. We do have preliminary plans for those, but those will be finalized when we get closer to those actual detours. The city will post those to their street closures, but we will also post detour routes throughout the project area as well. If anyone has any questions on that, they can reach out to me directly as well. Let's see. Someone is asking about the roundabout configuration. Let's see if I can get something on that. So this is what our proposed roundabout will look like. We will have protected rights east and westbound. We will also have a protected right northbound on the east side of that intersection as well from Northgate. Carrying that further to the east. Let's see. These are our planned limits at sunset. Again, and that carries traffic to the roundabout. Again, we have a protected right going westbound into the roundabout intersection, which allows folks to make that movement protected, but we also have 2 through lanes through the roundabout in that area as well. Let's see what else. Someone is asking about the water main relocation and negative impacts to neighborhoods. The water main relocation that we're discussing is a 30-inch transmission main. So we wouldn't anticipate that that would put people out of service, but we would work with our line maintenance department ahead of that closure and communicate any impacts directly to residents at that time. But again, that's a 30-inch transmission main. It's not a distribution. It's not something that directly provides water to individual residents. So we would hope to avoid any impacts with that relocation. What is the detour proposed when Woodland Road is closed for traffic coming south and wanting to go west on 119th Street? The best way to get around that would be if you're coming south on Woodland to go west on College and then down to Lone Elm and then continue on to 119th Street as needed. Again, I think I'm getting close to the end of the questions. If there's some that were omitted, or if you have individual issues that impact private property, any questions that you think I didn't get to, please feel free to reach out. My email is listed there on the screen. My phone number is 913-971-9075. Please feel free to reach out directly. I do appreciate everyone's time this evening. I appreciate everyone's questions to date. We've had some very involved community members, and that makes for a great process. And we appreciate that here at the City of Olathe. Again, thank you for everyone's time. If you have any specific questions, if you feel I didn't get to you, please reach out individually. And we appreciate any patience you can provide us as we work to construct all of these improvements over the next 2 years. Appreciate it. Thank you.